Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the next episode, bringing you Jack Anderson, activation marketer at 3M, part of the Industrial Adhesive and Tapes division. Jack and I talk about the 3M Solution Seminar, particularly the pre-event process, the process itself, the value that it brings, not only the converter channel partner like TapeCon, but the brand owners involved in terms of finding new design iterations and improving products. Without further ado, bringing you Jack Anderson from 3M. Thank you. Okay, well, thanks everyone. And we are here. Well, this is another in person podcast, which is pretty cool. So we're here at the 3M headquarters for the Better Product Solutions podcast. So Jack Anderson, and I wrote your title down here, Jack, Activation Marketer, Industrial Adhesives and Tapes Division here at 3M. We're coming at you live from St. Paul, and Nick is now on. Nick, this is the second podcast that we're doing live now, so Nick is kind of the behind the curtain here, bringing the podcast live with in-house equipment. So here we go. Jack, thanks for coming on, and this will be the third 3Mer on the podcast. So we've been doing this for a few years now, and
Great.
You're number 3. So Jack's official title, which I already mentioned, and so Jack, I'll throw you the softball question here in terms of briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah.
And what do you do at 3M?
Yeah, I feel like what I do today is almost harder to explain than where I came from. So I've been in the company a little over 9 years. The majority of that time has been in a sales capacity. So I have a lot of customer-facing experience, both with end user, OEM, MRO customers, as well as specifically with our converter partners, more on the channel side of our business. And so I spent 7 of my 9 years doing that, getting to see applications in the field, working with engineers, production managers, again, partners like yourself. And the last 2 years, I've been in this activation marketing position, which really is an interesting role. There's a lot of ways that it can be defined. I think where I spend a lot of my time right now is around gathering insights, but also actioning those insights and using my sales background to then go, what are some of the things I've noticed in my micro experiences in the field that we can take and make sort of these macro strategy to drive better results, better conversations, better experiences for both our channel partners and, of course, the ultimate end users of a lot of the products that 3M manufactures.
Nice. One thing I've always noticed with 3Mers is no one ever stays in a role very long.
Sure.
You know? So I have to imagine that the empathy from your sales experience now in this new role, because you've kind of done it on the field side.
Absolutely.
But now bringing what you've done kind of in an isolated up to like this macro, like that's cool. And every time I feel like 3Mers are always moving around. It's like part of the culture, it seems.
It is for sure. The diversity of experiences ultimately, I think, makes a better outcome for everyone. But the joke that I like to make is, whenever I get a chance to talk to a customer, whether they be someone like yourself, which I count as a customer of ours, of course, or somebody manufacturing things, it's like oxygen to breathe, right? You get away from that for too long, and you can hold your breath and you can make decisions, but every chance I get to interact with somebody who actually needs to use one of our solutions, it's like a big fresh air that sort of powers you forward and it going, where are we going to go next?
Yeah.
What are we going to do with it?
Right. And so the TapeCon team is here because we're collaborating, obviously, as a converter partner, getting some education and talking about how we can jointly kind of serve the ultimate end user, who ultimately is both of our customers.
Correct.
But in like a collaborative capacity. And you just got done presenting to our team on some of the stuff you've been doing on like survey-driven approaches for these solution seminars, which of course is kind of like a teaching opportunity, education for the ultimate end user. So the question is, what motivated you to kind of adopt this survey-driven approach for these seminars? Mm-hmm. And then what problems did it solve compared to maybe how you were traditionally doing the seminars? What new approach did you kind of uncover?
Yeah, I mean, like many things, unfortunately, experience is sort of the best teacher. So you get into the motivation aspect of it. I think it was learning that the way I and some of my peers had been doing this was the wrong way for a long time. And what I mean by that is a lot of the ways that we would engage with end user customers, OEMs, is we would talk about what we understood, which was our portfolio of products. And that's what we're trained on, of course. That's what we're knowledgeable about. That's where we have expertise. But we'd walk in the door and we'd say, I have this type of tape, and I have this type of tape, and I have this type of film or this type of fabric. And, again, customers, generally speaking, like they're familiar with those things, and oftentimes they'd politely nod along and say, oh, we use some of that, or no, we don't use those things. And as a salesperson, who's really my goal is to try to help identify problems and provide solutions, I would get frustrated where I'm like, it just feels like I'm not as relevant as I thought I would be with this account. And upon reflection, and again, repeated instances of having that experience, I sort of started thinking, I think I'm speaking my language and I'm not making much of an effort to speak their language. Because when I would hear from engineers, whether they proactively reach out to us or we'd have a dialogue, they're not always asking for a specific product. What they were saying was, I have this type of problem, and what I've tried is this, and this has worked and this has not worked. And as I started reflecting and talking with some of my peers and leaders in the marketing organization around what were those problems, they kind of started to have a theme to them. They kind of kept coming around again and again and again, which was around things like, aesthetics and throughput and, not just bonding, but like bonding certain types of materials. Or we're having trouble putting A and B together, right? Whether that be plastics or films, et cetera. And then things like heat shielding or moving out of maybe what our normal core competencies were into like thermal management, electromagnetic interference, things like that. And we just sort of started organically leading conversations saying, hey, like what I do is I help people with these challenges. And when we started doing that, the engineers would sort of lean in a little bit and go, what do you mean? What do you have for heat shielding? What do you have for durability? Versus like, this product does this, and I know this product makes something more durable, but asking them to connect those dots, never having met me or never having experienced it, it was honestly just a little unfair. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's a novel concept in sales and marketing, but it was something I think we had to learn in the converter markets aspect of our 3M business, because the beauty of that business is we can solve a lot of problems, but also the curse is we can solve a lot of problems. Right. Things can get really wide really quickly. And so I think it's natural for people to kind of drift into what they know and to lead with that, both as 3Mers and I think as converter partners.
Guilty.
And so I think as we get into this experience has taught us, like, we have to fight that a little bit and go, where does the engineer, where does the OEM want us to go? And then we provide what we can. Yeah,
I know. We're just as guilty. I mean, it's like when you're a hammer, everything's a nail, and there's so much capability, inside as a converter. There's so many things, so many different types of capabilities. It's so many solutions, but looking for the problem, right?
Yes.
But obviously it seems so natural, but yet at the same time, it's not natural to kind of lead with the probing of the what are the problems first. So let's talk about that a little bit, and I know there's like a pre-survey activity that you did, and of course, when people get surveys, like it's an immediate like, a survey, right?
A little bit.
But how did you crack the code? Like what kind of secret sauce, and what did you learn along the way to kind of guide this through to having these successful solution seminars?
Well, I think it's two things. Number one was like we really did have a lot of belief in the survey itself, and that was validated when these engineering teams would take it. They would do more of them. So like it would start with a small group, and then they'd go like, oh, this is relevant. Like, and also more and more would get forward, and they would complete it. So clearly, what we were asking were things that they were connecting with. But more importantly, when we do this, we're rarely doing this with an account or a customer that we're working with for the first time. Right. There's some sort of relationship that has been there in the past, and it's really kind of going to sort of our champion. So when we're going to go and do a solution seminar, or what others may call a lunch and learn, it's a time commitment on everybody's part, especially on the end user customer, to say, hey, we'll bring you lunch and everything, but like you got to put your team together in a room for 90 minutes, 2 hours, and somebody has to commit to that. And so I think the reason the survey started working is we were going to those champions saying, hey, I don't want to waste your time. I value your time. And to prove to you that I don't want to waste your time, I'm asking you to spend 2 minutes investment with me, provide these answers. So basically we have this menu of design challenges that we've learned folks like you in this industry commonly are facing. Mm-hmm. Not all of them will likely be applicable to you and your team, but if you spend those 2 minutes, when we come in and deliver that message for the 90 minutes to 2 hours that you grant us, it's going to be extremely streamlined on those things. And when they saw that survey, they sort of reviewed it, they went, yes, this is what I want to have done. And so it would start with them, and then that message would really come from them saying, team, 3M, preferred converter is coming in. I really want you to spend 2 minutes so that they don't waste your time and our time. And the joke I will often make with them if they don't quite understand what I'm saying is I go, I have a 500 slide deck that can solve a lot of these design challenges. You don't want me to present all 500, and you also don't want me to guess at how many of the 500 that I should do. So if you help me with this, we can get this really tailored for you very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, engineers are constrained, right? And sometimes there's a procurement wall, but you really got to get to those.
Yeah.
You got to get to the engineering personas, especially talking about some of these, they don't know what they don't know.
True.
And they're kind of in their own world. I guess, can you maybe at a high level go through just the process, the the survey, the post, and then afterwards I'd love to hear maybe whatever you can share in terms of maybe just an example story of of a positive outcome that came from the survey, from the whole process. I shouldn't just say the survey.
And hopefully for those listening, I don't know if you guys can include links or images or visuals, but for sure throw that slide in there so people can kind of follow along. But again, it's the survey aspect is we're essentially saying, hey, here's all these challenges we commonly see, right? Whether it's bonding, it's water intrusion, it's noise and vibration, heat shielding, thermal management, I could go on and on and on and on. I won't. You'll see it in the visual. But we start with that. We try to gather that information. And once we have that, we will connect 3M, and our partner connects and says, okay, this is what the customer is asking us for. How can we best deliver on this ask? And usually, of course, we have a bunch of content we've already made because we know, generally speaking, we know what people want to hear. We just want to pick the right ones. But usually we're working with you saying, are there some demo pieces that we can put together? Are there some examples of things that you've done? How can we bring not only the material science from 3M, but combine that with the processing and capabilities from you to show them how this comes to life in their actual process and implementation? So that's a lot of the pre-work. And then when we show up, we come day of, we actually usually begin, outside of introductions, with showing that pre-work to the team of people in the room. Because I think a lot of people, if I were to empathize with engineers, they've sat in lunch and learns before. They're probably accustomed to a vendor coming in and doing what I said at the start of this podcast, which is, here's what we have, right? What do you want to buy from us?
Pitch, right, yeah.
And I think, again, there's value in that. People go, oh, yeah, I want to learn more about that. But when you start it with, here's what you told us you wanted to learn about, and here's where we're going to focus our 90 minutes today, what I've noticed is engineers sort of leaning in, kind of picking up the pen and the paper and saying, okay, they start we're going to talk about noise, we're going to talk about water, we're going to talk about heat, and that's the way they're going to organize it. And what we try to do from a content standpoint is we don't want to just jump right into products. Of course, eventually the solution is going to materialize itself in a product naturally, but we do want to spend a little bit of time talking about the challenge at a high level as well. I think it's a lot to ask these engineers who wear a lot of hats in their respective organizations to be experts in all these things. Right? So when we jump in and someone says, hey, I have a noise problem, for instance, to assume that they are an expert in noise, I think is a bit of a stretch. So we'll normally start with, hey, we have experts in noise here at 3M, right? We have been a key player in the automotive industry and other markets for a long time. We have one of the original anechoic sound chambers here at 3M. So we actually have a little bit that we can educate you on noise, ground us in, okay, is it an airborne? Is it a structure-borne? Are we going to absorb the noise? Are we going to damp the noise? And then we can start moving into products. And generally speaking, in these environments, we're not ultimately trying to take an order on anything. Like in a best case scenario, someone sees something or they feel something and they go, can I sample this? Can I get some of this material in my hands to try? And the answer is always, of course you can. So that's really kind of the objectives then of that in-person execution. Talk about the things they want to talk about, show things of value, and hopefully have some action items that we can accommodate for them to move things to the next step. And then finally, in regards to that next step with follow-up, when we get a chance to do that survey process with the teams, more often than not, many of the design challenges in this menu get picked, not by everyone, right? Maybe we get 5, 10, 15 replies, and there'll be a couple challenges where there's 1 or 2 people that said, hey, I want to learn about permanent surface protection. That maybe doesn't make the cut in our 90-minute presentation because there's just so few people that want to focus on it. But what our team does is, in partnering with your team, is we'll go back, we'll find those 2 individuals, we'll send them a note, and we'll say, hey, we noticed that you guys want to talk about surface protection. We didn't have time at the seminar earlier this week, but here's sort of our go-to solutions. If you have time and want to jump on a call with us to talk about a specific application, let's do that. And so making sure that all of the people in attendance are heard in terms of the needs that they have is a huge priority for us. And generally speaking, the engineering managers and champions that we work with, they're super appreciative of that. And I think oftentimes sort of the follow-up we get from that champion is a lot of it is an aha moment to where they go, a lot of what we covered today, like I obviously knew was a priority of my team, but there were a few things that the survey results came in and I sort of had to call my direct reports and say, why is this such a priority? And all of a sudden I've learned of a new thing that I didn't realize was going on, right? Does it happen every time? No, but it's happened enough times to where, I kind of get a twinkle in my eye saying, hey, we've done a service today.
Yeah, I think the successful solution seminars we've had, what's been kind of fun is when you see, the customer, because they might bring some of the engineering team that maybe don't associate with each other as much. They're in different areas of the business, and just to see all of a sudden them kind of start brainstorming or wait a minute, I didn't know that, and then they're collaborating more. So no, it's really powerful, and
I think that's a great segue actually into the final question that you asked me earlier, which was like a positive experience that comes from that. And I think when we do execute these well, we often are being introduced to people that we didn't know at the customer. I think many of us sort of have a routine of like, I know that account very well. And I would ask some of my channel partners, well, who do you work with? I work with Mike in engineering. Right. And I'd be like, well, that's a very large company. Is Mike the only engineer? And they're like, well, no, but like Mike knows everything that's going on. And I'm like, I don't even know everything that's going on in my own house of 4, let alone having a team of 40 engineers, for instance. And so we do these and we meet new people and they come up and they're like, what I thought of you, maybe they looked at the converter, is like, I get gaskets from you. And what I thought of you, 3M, is your tape is on the back of the gasket. Like that was my relationship with the two of you. And now I'm realizing that you can do all these other things, whether it's around, structural attachment or, like I said earlier, noise vibration, or especially moving into that thermal electrical side. I think a lot of people don't realize that both of us are players in that space. And so one of the great examples I always remember was there was a company up here in the upper Midwest that was making, commercial cleaning equipment. Like think of like a Zamboni, but like for a cafeteria, not on ice. And we did a survey with them, and the results came back, and I think we had 15 replies to that survey. And a lot of it was around like they want to talk about bonding, they want to talk about sealing naturally, like many of them do. But then there were 10 replies that want to talk about EMI shielding. And I talked to the converter. I was like, have you heard about that? They're like, they've never talked about this before. And we get in the room and we start with the most important ones, and then we get to EMI. And I said, hey, before we get into some of the solutions and talking about the challenge, I just have to ask, guys, why all the interest in this? Right. And one of the gals in the room stood up and she said, hey, like my name is so-and-so, and I am the EMI manager. Like that's my focus. And we weren't previously planning to attend this, but John basically saw this on the survey and he sent it over to us. And so I have 7 of my team members here, and we have lots of interest, but EMI is our chief one. And I said, okay, thank you, but just give me some more context. Like, why is that? We've been working with you for a number of years. And she said, well, 5 years ago, our machines had 5 components in the circuit board that had to talk to one another. Fast forward to today, we're at 25. Right. And she goes, it creates so much noise and so many issues for us. We don't know what we don't know. And we didn't know that 3M was in this space. Like, we've been looking for solutions. We didn't realize that you guys had solutions for this. And I remember even after the seminar, the sourcing manager, the procurement manager came up to the converter and said to him, why didn't you tell me you guys had EMI?
Right, yeah.
And the converter's like, Jim, I've been working with you for 20 years. I thought you knew. And he's like, I didn't know. And I think that's the magic is we maybe make the wrong assumptions that our customers know what we can do for them. And we, honestly, collectively have to do a better job of bridging that gap. And I think that's what this experience often tends to do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that story. And obviously, I'm excited for our team is listening to all these tools and new approaches that you're taking. And we're excited to kind of deploy them, with some of our key accounts and some prospects and things. So thanks for coming on. Is there any final parting words, Jack, that you want to kind of impart? Otherwise, we'll kind of move this to close.
The only thing I would say, Steve, is that I've been trying to send this message to our preferred network over the last 18 months or so, and I think there are some folks that really are adopting it and trying to execute it, and there are some that can't do that. And so there's we have many preferred converters. They're all extremely great partners, but I think when I think about who can execute on this strategy, it's a combination of do they have the capabilities to deliver on this diverse range of design challenges, and are they willing to commit to partnering with us to sort of branch off into expertise in areas that maybe is not their normal bread and butter, right? Challenge themselves into some of that stuff. And so, I'm excited to partner with your team. I can see it from the folks that I've worked with, not only this week, but in previous converter colleges that you've sent up saying like, hey, I can't wait to start deep diving some of these topics that I previously was less familiar with. And at the end of the day, I had mentioned in an earlier discussion, we can't really deliver these solutions independently as 3M, right? So many of these things are in partnership with our converter partners. The customers don't use a roll of tape. They use pieces of tape. They use things that work in their assembly methods. So, very excited to see where it goes with TapeCon in 2026 and beyond. And thanks for the opportunity to talk about it today.
No, likewise. I mean, even internally at TapeCon, we've taken the 3M slogan of like science dot applied to life dot, and we've just internally at TapeCon, I've said, okay, 3M's the science, and we're the applied to life. We're part of that applied to life. So, no, I appreciate it, and obviously, we appreciate the long-standing kind of collaboration we've had with 3M for a long period of time. So, thanks, Jack. Thanks for being on the podcast, and this is a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.